And we're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Gamification Revolution. I'm your host, Gabe Zichermann. So excited to have you all here. It's another sunny but cold end of winter day in New York City. And it's just a great time to be around and so many exciting things going on. Um, I've got a lot of stuff to share with you today and welcome you to this edition of the show. For those of you who are returning, welcome back, regulars. So nice to see you. For those of you who are new to the Gamification Revolution webinar, you'll need to log in with one of your social media accounts. And once you've logged in, you can then ask me all kinds of questions, participate in chat with other people who are watching the show in real time. You can even come on the air if you have an actual camera and be shown and ask me questions or say things that are meaningful or important. And what I'm going to do over the next 30 minutes is I'm going to answer some of those critical questions. So make sure that you log in and click one of those buttons that says camera or question, and you can join me. And otherwise, it is also very exciting because today we have so many things to talk about, so many announcements to make. Let me reiterate, though, this time is yours to ask questions that are meaningful and exciting. And so you can and should click that question button or click that camera button and ask me the things that you need. And so special quick welcome to David Pagaro, who I guess is started a new job. Welcome, David. And this is your first week on that new job, so feel free to ask questions that might be interesting to you. Now, and welcome to the rest of you. So, let's start. Many of you, of course, know that there's this big event coming up in June called GSummit, and we've been putting on this event, GSummit, for 4 years or so, actually, coming up on the fourth year of GSummit. And we started the event back at the beginning of 2011, but of course, we were planning it in 2010. In the run up to the release of Jane McGonigal's book, Reality is Broken, the launch of my book, Game-Based Marketing, and we thought, we need to get a group of people together because I think some people might want to talk about this emerging field of gamification and engagement. And they're doing it all across these different spectra. As I've written the book and started to lecture on it in 2010, I noticed people coming and saying, oh, hey, wait a minute, I'm doing this, so this is kind of interesting. So we put this conference together. We launched in January of 2011 in San Francisco. That was our first edition of it. Jane McGonigal, our opening keynote. Awesome lady, many of you know her. And we were just blown away. It was completely sold out. People were like, what is going on? Games that are for different things. And, since then, we've done all these different installments of the show. It's really grown dramatically. This year we're expecting to have between 700 and 800 people in San Francisco. We're going to have 60 to 70 speakers. I got a few things to share with you. The event will take place over 3 or 4 days. There's so much stuff going on. There's hands-on workshops. There's lectures. There's been a new concept called mini labs that are happening. And if you are in any way interested in the subject of gamification engagement, whether you work with end users or you work with employees, it doesn't matter which side you're on. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, whether you're in banking or finance, or you're in consumer products, or you're in travel or entertainment, or you're an educator, there's something at GSummit for you. And one of the core ideas that I had about the conference from the very beginning, which I think turns out to be true, is that the concepts of engagement, the challenge of engagement, is actually quite universal. So really, even though you feel like, oh, let's say that you happen to work on, you work for a big global consulting firm, like Sasha Goto, one of our regulars on the show and one of our guests from a couple of weeks ago. Let's say that you work for, a big consulting firm, like Sasha does, McKinsey, and, you've got to deal with getting your employees, your staff engaged with the question of Q&A, for example, of technical products or checking out some of the new things that the company builds. You might think that your problem is really super unique. You're the only person facing this. You may feel alone. You might think this is a very unique engagement challenge. I mean, gosh, I've got to, get people to do Q&A for software. No one's ever had to deal with that before. But in fact, you'll find out, as Sasha, of course, knows from being a regular attendee and speaker at GSummit, actually, that the challenges that we face getting people to engage with a particular problem, whether that problem is Q&A of enterprise class software at a giant multinational firm, or getting students to pay attention to a lesson plan, or getting customers to engage with a small business through a loyalty program. All of these things are actually common ideas. They're all common ideas. And what they all hinge on is the ability to get and keep people's attention, to change their behavior by getting and keeping their attention and focusing them on that. And of course, Sasha says here, you can gamify pretty much anything, which I tend to agree with 100%. So these challenges are fairly universal. And because gamification is such a new discipline and a new field, you need a lot of evidentiary examples to design your experience. That is to say, you need to see what other people are doing. And frankly, you need to learn from their successes and from their failures, right? Because failure is a great teacher. So you need to see these case studies. You need to look at them. You need to say, I like this, I don't like this. I think this idea would work for my company. I don't think this would. I think this is meaningful. I don't think this is meaningful. And sort of pick and choose and assemble an engagement strategy that works for your particular context. Now, in order to best to do that, you'll want to digest all of these best examples. And you'll want to hear from people who've actually done it and people who honestly get up in front of you and say, this is what we did, this is what we learned, this is what worked, and this is what didn't. And that's really the hallmark of this GSummit event that's taking place in June. That's the whole context. It is case studies, it is focused ideas, it is a sharing of knowledge across a spectrum. It's far and away the best and frankly, really the only place with that level of concentration that brings that many different people together from all the spectra to understand and learn from each other and network. And I encourage you to come if you're interested in this subject. It really is, of course, my pride and joy. I love it so much, and it's an amazing experience. You can register with the discount code GAMREV, GAMREV, at gsummit.com. It'll save you $200 off the conference as a watcher of the Gamification Revolution. And if you do get a chance to come and interact, you'll see lots of people you've seen here actually live and in person. Because the first thing I want to tell you about, first new thing, is that this show, Gamification Revolution, will start coming to you multiple times a week between now and GSummit. So we're hoping to get up to 2 times a week regularly between now and GSummit. We've got a lot to share with you. We want to show you and have you talk to some of the biggest experts, the new folks that are coming to the show this year that are going to be speaking at GSummit. Folks from Boeing, folks from Microsoft, right? Folks from Nokia. We've got lots of really, really interesting examples across a wide spectrum of areas, including not just these big multinationals, but also some of the world's hottest startups. Companies that some of you might know, like Get Taxi or Rocket Trip. 2 companies, of course, LiveCube, which many of you have seen. So Aaron, who actually runs LiveCube, which is a live gamification platform that drives social media interaction in real life. Aaron will be there speaking about all the different things that we've learned about LiveCube. And then, of course, all these other great big companies that you haven't heard from that you need to hear from. Folks from Google, like Jeb Havens, who's a product management and game designer at Google, or Peter Heinrich at Amazon, who's responsible for the overarching gaming strategy there. A lot of these folks are first-time speakers at GSummit, but they're also going to be joining us here on Gamification Revolution, which we're now kind of talking about it in this context. They're going to be joining us between now and June. We're going to be coming to you twice a week. Hopefully, you can join us both of the times. Of course, you all know, if you're a regular watcher of this particular program, that it is available to you afterwards. So even if you can't make it live with us during the week when we record, and I have to tell you that the dates and times may shift a little bit. We're going to try to keep this Thursday regular for those of you who are regular watchers on Thursday, but the date may shift a little bit. So for the other one, so you can always watch the recaps of that at gamification.co/live, which is the URL for this particular chat. So I encourage you to join in with us as much as you possibly can. Now, one of the things about GSummit that's brand new, that's really exciting, many of you know that at the beginning of the GSummit event, we have a series of workshops. And those workshops are full-day hands-on workshops. You can earn certification with some of them. There's one from me. There's one from Mario Herger, who's done one in the past, which are awesome. There's a new one from the team at Merrick's, who you met last week, which is all about persuasive design, which will be very, very interesting. We also have another one as yet unannounced that we'll be announcing shortly. But this is really super exciting. We have a new series of what we're calling hands-on labs at GSummit. The concept is longer form, almost like mini workshops that you can have with folks that go in greater depth and greater detail on various subjects where you can really get hands-on with them, and they're going to be super exciting. And if you're interested in getting more kind of engaged on some of the design questions around gamification, you'll have an opportunity throughout those 3 days, the regular days of the conference, 11th through the 13th of June, to take these hands-on labs. These labs are going to be so exciting and so cool. So we've announced a couple of them already. One of them is with Jeb Havens. Jeb is an amazing game designer and a product guy from YouTube. And hopefully we'll have Jeb on here before the conference. I've known Jeb for a long time. Amazing. He's going to talk about how to design for emotion, how to design emotion into experiences. And Jeb's got a tremendous amount of experience doing that. So it's actually going to be really exciting, and I'm going to want to talk about that as well. And we've also announced a mini workshop with Monica Cornetti, who many of you might remember from a few weeks ago. Monica does low-tech gamification in the enterprise, how to gamify things without building software, how to gamify things, with pen and paper, with cutouts or whatever. Not dissimilar from some of the examples of Amy Baskin. Many of you know Amy's been on here and was a speaker last year at GSummit. Not dissimilar conceptually to what Amy's done in her classroom very successfully at FSCJ. Monica does in large enterprises, gamification without a lot of complicated software investment. And she's going to be doing a hands-on lab on how to do that. So how cool is that, right? So over the course of 3 days, I'm so excited, right? We've got a link up there, Nada put a link up there to find out more about the hands-on labs. Over these few days, I'm so excited. It's just going to be like a learning fest. And for those of you who haven't been there before, GSummit is really exhausting intellectually. I have to say, for me, obviously, I'm running around a lot, but for everyone who's there, because we just cram a ton of stuff into the 3 days, and it's just like filling your brain with great ideas. And thanks for that, Sasha, also talking about how great it is. So lots and lots of great ideas that will come out of this. Hot startups, big companies, some speakers you've already seen before, the amazing Fedra, who many of you know from IBM, Nicole Lazaro from Zero Design, a great game designer, Andrei Kushevsky, who's some of the folks that you've seen in the past, and Ryan Mizusaki back from Delta Airlines to talk about this super cool stuff that Delta has been doing in bringing things together on the employee and enterprise side, and then a bunch of new people that you haven't seen before. And one of the featured speakers that I'm so excited about is a guy named Robert Tercek, who some of you might know. Robert is an expert in sort of creativity and innovation, and particularly around things like the Internet of Things. And he's got a really exciting viewpoint to share with us about the future of gamification, a longtime game industry guy. Okay, so I'm just so excited about it. I'm like freaking out a little bit. You have to excuse my enthusiasm for a minute. One other side of this discussion that I'm actually very pleased about, for those of you who are sort of more long-term viewers of this market and the industry, is the representation from the loyalty business that we have this year. We have an extraordinary set of loyalty industry people coming already. Just the people we've announced in public so far are already kind of amazing, and you're going to get really a kick out of this if you do consumer gamification or engagement. We have, and we have never had this level of loyalty, interest, and attendance. So we're actually super excited. And there's more to tell. Jacqueline Vita is coming from JetBlue. Many of you may know JetBlue has had a very successful run with a exciting gamification example. So we've got Jacqueline coming from JetBlue. We have Ian DiTullo from Air Canada, which, as some of you might know, has done what might be considered the first truly competitive gamified loyalty program case study, which is very interesting, right? Because they really have just said, let's get people competing a little bit, which is unusual and pretty breakthrough. And you've seen Ian here chat before, and those of you who were GSummit Global have heard from Ian. And also Francisco Schnaas from Aeromexico. So we've actually got kind of a NAFTA trifecta. We've got Canada's largest airline, Mexico's largest airline, and the U.S. is one of the U.S.'s most admired and respected airlines, all coming, plus a lot more on the loyalty side. Yes, Mexico, David. A lot more on the loyalty side to share that's going to be coming out in the next little while. So I'm actually really excited because, as many of you know, the loyalty business, it's kind of gamified. It sort of feels like game-like, right? It was the original part of the inspiration. Loyalty and gamification should be together. But the loyalty business has actually been very static. They really haven't done much that's been especially compelling over the last few years. And in fact, last week we had a couple of folks from Merits on here, and we were talking. For those of you who haven't seen it, it's been one of our more popular web shows. The video is available. I'm sure Nada will get you the link for last week's episode right now. But we had the folks from Merits on here, and I asked them the question, why does loyalty suck so much? Why do things happen like Delta Airlines announces, this massive change in the way that the loyalty program is structured? Why do people not care very much? Thanks for that, Beth, saying that she really liked the show last week. Thank you. Other people saying we've got so much loyalty program participation, but we actually have very little engagement. And you would think that, by now, loyalty and gamification so similar. What's going on? And so I want to add some color actually to that discussion from last week that we didn't get to that's been on my mind. So one of the funniest conversations that I had, in recent memory, thanks for that link. Now, put the link up for last week's show there in the chat. One of the funniest conversations that I've had in recent memory about gamification was with one of the world's largest loyalty program providers not that long ago. We were talking, they called me, they wanted some input or they wanted some feedback from me. And they said, it seems like in 2010, when we first started talking about gamification and loyalty, we were very much in sync. Like the ideas were very similar. And then somehow, you guys in gamification just kept going. You just kept innovating and developing things. And we sort of are still here where we were 3 or 4 years ago, still talking about the same stuff. And I was like, yeah, isn't that sort of shocking, right? Isn't that a sort of weird situation? Why is it that the loyalty program people have not been able to, grab the brass ring and actually get where they need to be? What's wrong with them? Now, one of the interesting things about the conflict in loyalty, and I'll tell you this applies also to gamification, so I want everybody to pay very, very close attention to this. All programs, all customer loyalty and incentive programs always begin with the most generous offering they will ever have. So they start at the top of the mountain of generosity. Now, they sometimes add features and stuff, but the basic economics of the program begin heavily weighted in favor of the player. Now, this makes sense in some ways, right? You need to get people to participate in the program. That's one piece of it. So you want it to look really good. You want it to have lots of features. You want people to be really into it, right? You want them to love it, love it, love it. The second piece of it is naivete. At the beginning, when we're designing a new program or a new experience, we always underestimate the cost of delivering the program, right? And overestimate people's reliance or interest in the reward. So that tends to bias the first version of a program to be as rich and rewarding from a pure reward standpoint as possible. And I just want to also point out, I'm mostly talking here about, earn 1 point for every dollar spent or earn 1 point for every mile spent. I'm talking about this sort of classic earn and burn loyalty program design. Always starts off richest. We also always underestimate the amount of participation in a way, right? So we think a lot of people will use it, but then we're like, not that many people will use it. And so what happens over time is the programs lose their financial bang over time. So effectively, the cost of delivering the program keeps going up at a time when, and especially over time, companies want the cost to go down. So great, you've delivered this marginal revenue, you've delivered this marginal interaction for 10 cents on the dollar. Now I want you to do it for 9. You should have leverage, right? But in the world at large, the world we live in, inflation makes things get more expensive over time. And so that is there on the redemption side of the economy, right? The things that you're actually redeeming for are theoretically getting more expensive over time. But in this context of the economy, inside the company where the program is being developed, people want the program to get cheaper over time. So what does a loyalty program operator have to do over time? They have to tighten up the economy. They have to reduce the total amount of redemption. They need to make the things that you're redeeming for cheaper and cheaper. They need to get you to redeem less over time. And also shift you to things which have lower costs or shift you to things with a higher degree of arbitrage, right? Like get you to take up the magazine subscriptions instead of, fly the free tickets. Make less free seats available. Make less free nights available. Make the number of points required for the free nights go up and up and up. That's a necessity in the program. That's a necessity in loyalty program design over time. It's something that you actually have to do. So what ends up happening is that programs get worse. They're at their best at the beginning, and they get progressively worse over time. Overall, changes can be made. There are bumps in the road. Not every program follows the exact same trajectory. Some people might argue that Starwood Preferred Guest overall has gotten better over time, but the actual cost of redemption has gone up really substantially in the last 5 or 7 years. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. The point is, this is a fundamental dichotomy when we're talking about the pure kind of econometric loyalty program. 1 point from $1, redeem for free stuff. So what's necessary is to think about those non-cash rewards, think about those really meaningful, status, access, and power rewards when I talk about stats from the very beginning. And that's something that gamified loyalty does really differently. We think about those things from the beginning. We're focused on the non-cash reward from the beginning. We're focused on keeping that thing interesting from the beginning, separate from just the free giveaways at the end of the story. Now, you'd be surprised. Even people who really believe in this status, access, power, and stuff reward model that we've talked about, that you guys know, my SAPS model of rewards, even people who really believe and agree with that often are like, oh, okay, cool, but let's give people some free stuff because that's what they really want and that's going to be easier and da-da. Again, I'm not opposed to it, but I'm just saying, if you're building something that looks like a customer employee loyalty program and you over depend on that stuff at the very beginning, what you're going to end up doing is over time, you're going to have to give people less. You're going to have to make it harder, right? And you're going to have to make that process harder and harder to achieve over time for everybody across all levels. Now, Beth points out that there are some rewards that don't cost a lot of money, like being first aboard on an airplane, which Beth, I think you're absolutely 100% right. That's exactly the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. That, by the way, is an access reward. It's an access benefit in the SAPS model. So there's an example. There's a lot of stuff that we can give people that doesn't cost stuff up front, so that over time we can reduce the amount of inflation we have to create in order to keep the program economically viable, right? This is the central tension. So programs that over depend on the rewards, on tangible stuff, the last S of SAPS, those programs are the ones with the weak long-term play. So all programs must get worse over time as a result of this, as a result of their external pressure, if they depend mostly on stuff. Now, there's actually a really interesting comment in here from Roman Rackwitz. So Roman, who many of you know, is a very, very engaged expert on the subject of gamification, says that loyalty programs don't want to change from result-focused to journey-focused. And I think this is a very, very interesting observation. So when Roman talks about the journey, he's talking about the player, I assume he's talking about the player or the user's journey over time. What is it that I, as the user, I as the player of this experience, I as the flyer or buyer or whatever the case may be, what am I getting out of this? Where's my personal goal? Where am I going? Why am I even interacting with you? What's in it for me, right? What's my personal journey here in the experience? And so one of the core differences between gamification and classic loyalty program design is that the transactional part of the experience, what I think Roman means the reward result focus, the transactional part of the experience is actually the least important behavior to address. We understand that transactions are the end of a behavioral funnel. So getting you to pull your card out, getting you to buy the thing or interact with somebody, that's actually happening at the end of a process for people. And then, of course, that process can start again as a loop. It's not at the beginning. It's not the primary focus of the thing that we need to be designing, because often that's actually not the hard behavior to get people to do. The hard behavior is to get them to care about that. And we have to, in order to be able to do that, we need to understand what is it that they care about? Why are they here in the first place? What are they after? That journey that Roman is referring to, which I think is very powerful and very meaningful. So that player journey becomes central to the experience. And loyalty programs in general are not very good at thinking about things in that way. Gamified loyalty programs are much more clever at thinking about those things that way. So as I've often pointed out and said, related to this, and thanks for that comment, Roman, as I've often pointed out and said, related to this particular subject, I don't know how you will design your first assay at a transactional loyalty program. I can't predict exactly what you're going to do, but I can definitely predict your next move after that. I don't know what your first move is, but I always know what your second move is. And that's just because there's no escaping the need or the pressure to constantly ratchet up the marginal effect of what it is that you're doing and diminish the cost of doing it. And so more than ever, we need gamified loyalty. More than ever, companies who do not have loyalty programs must start with a gamified loyalty framework or gamified loyalty position to begin with. You just won't be able to deliver the right user experience over time, even if you have worse rewards. So even if your tangible rewards are not as good, you can't afford them. You've got to start by thinking about that journey and thinking about the meaningfulness of that. Now, tying that back to GSummit, we've got all these great people coming. So we've got these people on the front end of the loyalty program. And one thing that you'll notice when you see Ian, when you see Francisco, when you see Jacqueline from JetBlue, you'll notice that they're young. You'll notice that they're highly motivated and engaged. And you'll notice that they care very deeply about loyalty. I think there are other generation who are the people who didn't grow up with the first generation loyalty programs, but actually kind of the second generation. And not it says they're all millennials. I don't know. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say they're all really young. I think Jacqueline may be the youngest of the three. I love Ian and Francisco. I think she's younger. We'll find out in person when we get there. So one of the things is that, they're not from the first generation of loyalty program users. They're after. So they're people who saw sort of the pluses and the minuses, saw them both, and came to the conclusion that we need to do something more clever and more meaningful. And that's something that is significant, a significant sea change in that business. For those of you who follow it, you'll know. So Sasha's saying here in chat, one thing that I think is very interesting, which is that many people who see sort of gamification, when we're pitching that idea, they think that free stuff is part of the equation, or probably that it's a little bit easier, right? It's easier for everyone to understand free stuff as a cornerstone of it. And I think especially when you're dealing with people on the older side of the spectrum, when you're dealing with people who come from more traditional loyalty, they come from more traditional, especially in retail, the idea of getting people to do things without giving them free things just gets very complicated. Very, very, very hard to get people to do it. It's very hard to change the mindset, not only of the end user's mindset is in the right place. I think Sasha's point is it's hard to change the enterprise's mindset. It's hard to convince the people inside the organization who need to change that the free stuff is not the only thing that we need to focus on. We need to do it after. Sort of echoing some of these other comments that have been put up. So Roman talking about how gamification requires mastery, right? And in a classical loyalty program, you just have to buy stuff. You don't have to master anything. I think, Roman, that's 100% true. I think mastery becomes a very important key, part of this equation. The hard part here, and this is one of the difficult things, especially if we're talking about getting a company to buy into the idea of doing gamified loyalty. One of the complicated things about doing this is you're going to have to convince them to spend some money and time doing the design. And it's surprising. Even people who come and they take the program, they take the certification course that you can do with me at GSummit, they take the online courses, they learn all this kind of stuff about gamification, engaging design. They're like, yeah, okay, cool, but great, let's just do this quickly, let's push. I had a company come and try to build a gamified training program in 6 weeks. It's crazy. People just want to push through it. We've got to be able to take a step back and do the work that's required to figure out what that journey is, right? And Seamus talking about how the journey is like a narrative. And can you write an amazing narrative arc? Can you write an amazing narrative story in a week that's great and really gets people where they need to go? I don't think so. I think it would be very difficult, especially if you're trying to design something that's going to get people to do something over, a very, very long period of time. You've got to be able to craft that well. And you've got to have a start point that you can test. So it's got to be agile, but first you've got to convince people. You've got to be able to get people to test it out. You've got to do the design. You've got to put the effort in. And so in that regard, I guess in many ways, gamified loyalty is much, much more complicated, than building traditional loyalty, where you just go to a vendor and say, throw this together. For all the moaning about gamification as PBL, let's moan for a second about how boring and same all loyalty programs are. So PBLs are a big step up. Just PBL is a humongous step up from what most people get for loyalty. And to Sasha's point, there are no quick wins if you're aiming for sustainable engagement. So I want to tell you, though, that I think if there was going to be one thing that you do, other than joining us here on this Gamification Revolution webinar, is to come join us at GSummit. And that discount code, again, is GAMREV, GEMREV, gsummit.com, June 10th through the 13th. Join us in San Francisco. It's probably the most focused time for you to think about this subject matter, network with other people, and get where it is that you need to go. It's a very cost-effective use of your time, and your plane will be full. And lots of great comments in the chat, everybody. I really, really appreciate it. It's always so good to have you here on the Gamification Revolution. You join us next week, where we'll come to you hopefully twice. Going to try. Join us next week, where we'll come to you with more great guests and more great chats and answering all of your questions. Thanks to everybody for being with us today. I'm your host, Gabe Zichermann. You can follow me on Twitter at @GZichermann, and you can continue the chat with the hashtag GAMREV, GAMREV. In the meantime, everybody, we'll see you again next week. Thanks for joining us. Keep having fun.